Welcome, everyone. Planning Commission meeting. This is February 23rd, 2023. Quick roll call. Let's see. Joshua Knox, John Schumacher, Tom Furlan, John Mangan are all planning commissioners remotely connected, and I'm present in the room. The agenda this evening, we have one amendment to it, and that is item 3, which is to be a preliminary public hearing, is being rescheduled. It's the Allen French 9-unit residential subdivision on Colonel Page Road. Is that to be a time yet to be determined, or do we have a target on that at this stage?
I'm sorry.
Looking at item
to be determined.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to run this and participate, so
We're both here.
Can you take a look at letting people in?
Yes,
That would be good. Okay, that's what I was just doing.
So as we get going, for the folks that are online, as we get into items, if you need to, if you want to be heard, please use the raise your hand option on the bottom, which is listed under reactions. And if you can't find that or you get frustrated, just holler at us and maybe we'll let you in. So before we get going into the main part of the meeting, I do want to just make it known that the first item, or the item under our consent agenda, which is a UVA Medical Center item, just want to make just a statement that I am employed by the UVA Medical Center. I'm not part of this facility in any way, shape, or form, but I am employed by the parent organization. If anyone, commissioners, or anybody in the audience has a concern about that, this is the time to make mention. Commissioners are okay. See heads raising, and I don't see John, but I'm assuming he hasn't said anything, so we're good. All right. First item on the agenda, actually, before we do that, for anybody who's going to be offering any testimony this evening, either from the room or online, I would like you to just, would like to give the oath. I'd like to just have you give me an acknowledgement that any testimony you present this evening will be truthful to the best of your abilities. Would like just a verbal acknowledgement online, and you folks in the room give me a head nod. So I'm assuming folks online, since I'm not hearing anything, that nobody's going to be speaking tonight. Oh, Ken gave me a thumbs up, so okay, I'll take that as an acknowledgement. And Don, check. It's like Tracy gave me a check. I think we are good to go. And just for the note, for the record, Sharon Kelly, staff member, is also remote tonight. All right, first item, public comment. Folks, this is where we talk any items that you want to present to the Planning Commission. This is that are not on the agenda. This is the time you talk to us. This is also where we discuss the consent agenda. If anybody has any questions about it, if staff has any items they want to bring up, or if planning commissioners have any questions about the consent agenda item or items. So we do have a consent agenda. So public portion of the meeting is open. Public comment portion. Commissioners, questions? Anybody in the public want to offer any commentary or question on the consent agenda item, which is, it's a site amendment for UVM Medical Center for a proposed 3-sided addition to the facility at 2 Essex Way. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Since there was no discussion, commissioners, I would look for a motion on the consent agenda item.
I move we approve the consent agenda. Second.
Moved by Josh, seconded by Tom. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay. Next item.
I think it's 5-0.
5-0.
Time is counting.
Dave's. Oh, you're right.
Dave's not here. Right?
Thank you. 5-0. Correct. That's why he's a teacher.
I can count all the way to 5.
All right. So we now are on the next item on our agenda, which is the town plan update. Catherine, Josh, whomever, who's going to run with this for us?
Josh, do you want to kick it off? And I've got some visuals
absolutely.
that I can pull up for us.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I have some tabs open as well, so whoever it's easier to do that. So where we are in the town plan update process is we have now held all of our public visioning sessions, whether in person or virtually, or just getting feedback, that process. And excuse me. The stage we are at now is we're compiling the data, the inputs, the feedback, and we as a working group have put together this super cool word cloud, which represents in categorized form what sort of the most common things said or the biggest inputs were in each sort of subcategory. And Catherine, do you want to put that up, or would you like me to? Which one's easier?
I can do it.
Okay. Yeah, so I was figuring we could take them through it. This is very, once you see it, you don't need any explanation, but take them through them in order, so recreation, infrastructure, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. So I have this in alphabet. Oh, it's not sharing, is it? Guess I have to pull the individual thing up.
Talk amongst yourself for a minute.
If there's trouble on that, and I can, then you got it. Okay. Okay. Yes. Yeah, this is very, very intuitive and self-explanatory. The one thing that we we sort of had to do as a working group is determine sort of which things fit in which overarching category, which for the most part was, again, very self-explanatory. There were a few, Ken can jump in and correct me at any point, but there were, I think, one or two orphans that we couldn't quite find a home for, but most of them fit reasonably well in a given thing, because that's the manner in which they were received. We would say, what are your thoughts about this subcategory, that subcategory, and then they gave their answers.
Josh, can I interrupt just for a second? We got a note from our recording clerk. There's a name on the attendance record that's just listed as Pam's iPhone, and if we could have a name to go with that, that would help for the record of the meeting. So whoever that is, if you could just come off mute for a moment and just let us know who you are. Comes across as Pam's iPhone.
Pam, if you want to put it in the chat instead, you could do that.
Go ahead, Josh, and continue, please. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. So if you're not familiar with word cloud, the larger the size of the word, the more frequently it showed up in our inputs. So as you see, agriculture programs is probably the largest, and oftentimes the input simply was one or two words, or it fell under something like this very easily. And working landscape, a priority community garden. Working landscape does tie into some other zoning themes. It looks like we have a hand from Ken, who I said was the one who was instrumental in a lot of the word cloud stuff. So, Mr. Chair, if you could recognize him for a moment, please.
Please, Ken, go ahead. If you're able to come off mute, Ken, please. Josh is looking for help.
But his hand was up. I thought he was jumping in.
Maybe he was waving goodbye.
Must be his microphone isn't picking it up.
Yeah, he's off mute.
Yeah.
Why don't you continue, Josh, and then Ken, if you were able to get your video. There you go.
My computer begins with the current microphone. So I wanted to say when going through these, if you would, colors are totally customizable. The words also change colors as well as size. So some of these are just defaulted when I made them. So input on looks wouldn't hurt, and I do any of them.
Thanks.
Thank you. So if we could go to the, unless there are any questions about this one, we could just go to the next category and go through each of them and sort of get.
Oops, you know what? I went one too far. Here. Oh, no. No, I didn't. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, you go.
I did.
So you said it's regrouped to be alphabetical, right?
Right. Yep.
Climate would be next. As you see, regulations and green incentives for the two largest here relative to climate. I don't think regulations need to really be belabored. It obviously meant regulating things that would affect climate, and then green incentives, we're doing it in a if you will, softer way rather than outright saying, shall do this, saying there's an incentive to do this. And those are the two largest things that people said when thinking about climate. Next one is education and biodiversity. The largest here, although the regulations at the bottom, which conservation regulations, climate regulations, while not the exact same thing, obviously you can imagine an overlap. But we emphasize biodiversity. I think I want to say the original data just said diversity, but it was clear that what was meant was biodiversity, diversity of landscape, species, what have you, which ties in, of course, with scenic views, wildlife, forest, as well as water. Education will be to that too. Next one, please. Obvious here that what people wanted most were recreational opportunities, whether that meant motion of things we already do have, such as the trails and sandhill, or creation of new ones. And this ties into opportunities, does tie into something like connectivity infrastructure. I don't want to get to that too easily, but that was something that the idea of lots of trails connecting everything, and there being a more connectivity via something like bicycling and walking rather than just cars. Next one. This one, as you see, there's a lot that were really, really popular. Affordable housing is always a very popular one. And then consider the impacts does have, of course, the connection to things like climate and conservation, but this we viewed in this context was meant more generally about consider what the impact in all ways of something would be. And you see, aesthetics is pretty high up there. And you have things sort of floating around like mixed use town center, which in a way, given what we've been talking about with the EPC, all can kind of work with aesthetics and affordable housing. I saw those as all sort of a piece of sort of the same thing. Likewise with something like housing infill, there are things that they were stated differently, but you can commonalities, I believe, without forcing them. Next one. That's it. Oh yeah. Again, local businesses, business variety. The sort of overarching thing you can sort of see is the sustainable local thing, resilience, things here, opportunities here, density here, as opposed to somewhere else. And that also ties into beginning with agriculture. You saw that working farms or working land was something that was viewed as, at least the one I went to, stuff I saw was connected to the idea of local business variety. We're all seen as sort of a working landscape, keeping density in one spot, preserving the rural character. Next one, please. This is what I was mentioning earlier about the idea that bike and pedestrian connectivity for infrastructure was really, really something people mentioned a lot. that does connect to, as we saw up above, the idea of opportunities, trail connectivity. These are the same kind of thing. The idea is to have, use of the word resilient grid, is connected to that idea in terms of want things to be connected, wanted it denser, you wouldn't have to take a car everywhere. As you see, mass transit, address circ, things like that are all part of the piece of connectivity, wanting to be, emphasizing connectivity is an important thing, which, as we've talked about, ties into density, ties into affordable housing. And I think address search, I want to say that was more not something with the search, but acknowledge that we weren't going to do something with the search and address connectivity infrastructure from that acknowledgement.
And then the bottom one there, it says address route. It's supposed to be Route 15. And
Right.
yeah. So that's more of the, we've got a lot of traffic, how to handle that again. That's more of the connectivity, safety, parking. You know,
There's
all
also a
those issues.
pedestrian gap
Pedestrian gap,
between
yeah.
us and the village.
Right.
City.
Speeds once you get further out, closer to Jericho. Yeah, comments like that.
Yeah, so that's a lot to take in all at once, of course, but I trust people see the sort of overarching commonalities between this and sort of the ethics that people were describing in terms of affordable housing, connecting to density, connecting to infrastructure connectivity, connecting to trails. You can see what sort of ethics is being imagined there. I don't think I'm overstepping to say that.
So I'm older and I've forgotten already what slides 1 through 7 said on them. But do we have one that focuses on economic viability?
That was on
Yeah,
development. Yeah.
this one.
That
Okay,
one.
thank you.
Yeah, but like I said, that's a lot to throw at everyone all at once. So you just want to take a minute.
So what do we see as the next? What do we see as the next step with this?
So the next step, one of the things we wanted to do at the meeting tonight was sort of refresh everyone's memory what the introduction to the 2016 town plan looked like, what the introduction for the ETC next, sort of the executive summary looked like, and then from there, the idea is to put this word cloud, put the word cloud out with some summaries of the categories at this year's town meeting, just to sort of show the town, yes, we heard what you said, here's what you said in the aggregate, and then build on those executive summaries and come up with then sort of a, lack of a better term, like the executive summary of what the 2024 town plan would be. And then this is where Catherine would jump in onto what the timeline would be and our involvement as a commission as opposed to the working group. But like I said, our solicitation of input's done. It's just a matter of aggregating the data in a much more, like a more useful executive summary way that would frame the town plan as a whole. Comparing it with the 2016 town plan and the ETC next, we could then see exactly how much work we need to do in terms of reinventing the wheel or not. There are some things, obviously, we're calling it's a city and not a village, so there are changes from 2016, but there are some things that have remained the same that we wouldn't need to do incredibly deep dives on them. There are priorities that are still priorities.
Ken,
The vision aspect.
Ken, do you have something you want to jump in? Your hand's up.
Okay. So, Josh, maybe you should also, maybe it's already reported, give some indication of the volume of input like that.
Did you hear him, Josh?
Exact number in front of me,
Yeah.
but a lot.
Yeah, I can pull up.
Over 100. Sorry, go ahead, Ken, you had the exact number.
No. Catherine was going to finish that.
Yeah, so I was going to pull up we have a spreadsheet that has our comments. It's a little bit longer form. So, 118. Yeah. Although so we have 118, but this is actually, some items are grouped.
Is column D the number of responses?
Yes, per. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Trying to find the spreadsheet that I covered.
Yeah, we have multiple spreadsheets, so maybe there is a.
People and about 100 people and about 500 and some odd.
Yeah.
So you guys are mucking with the numbers. PC.
179.
Okay. PC members. Right now, Josh specifically, is there more work that you want to do, or is this what you're thinking of as the in-house discussion with the PC, or do you want to vet this more or socialize this more before the PC dives in and has a deeper discussion on it? What's your vision on that?
So the only socializing of it that we sort of mapped out and sketched out, I guess I should say, is at this year's town meeting, like I said, to show them, here's what you said as your input, acknowledging that we heard you giving summaries by category of what people had said. But after that, my assumption, and anyone jump in if this isn't your assumption, my assumption is it would then be the PC sort of thing. Or the town plan process would start going where where staff and PC are converting this into something. I mean, into a town plan more properly, but I mean, putting into usable parts of a town plan.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the comments that we realized, or things that we realized when we were looking at the word clouds, is that the word cloud is helpful as a bunch of terms, but it doesn't really explain maybe the detail that we would want the public to see about the top items, especially. So we'd have a paragraph, and I think our working group would be working on the paragraphs for each of the different topic areas, by way of explaining sort of that vision for that area. And then after hearing at town meeting about, did we hear you? What do you think? And I think we should put it up on our website as well, solicit feedback, as many ways as we can. And then we need to, I think, consolidate a little bit more even and putting everything together more into a concise vision statement, like and it doesn't have to be a sentence by any means, but a paragraph or two. That's what it's been like in our town plans. So that's what I see. Probably, the planning commission having a role in that, as well as, I think the working group could still be working on that.
I mean, I see the working group as the representatives for this initiative, right? Because this has been a really big shift from any effort that we've done in the past, and that we've solicited the public input, and Ken and Josh and the entire group that worked on this, thank you very much, because this is what we've been aiming for a while, to try to reach out and be in front of things and get solicit input, not just to what we've put on the table in front of people, but actually to help us decide what goes on the table. So I see this as the roadmap so the working group, I do feel that they should get the recognition during the town plan. And for the same purpose that Josh and Ken just did. I mean, the number of people that are there, the idea that they solicited, this is a collated report of the input from a lot of people and a lot of responses. And this will help drive what the PC looks at, in addition to any of the regulatory requirements that we have to, like we always have to.
Right.
But instead of us necessarily saying, well, there's this backlog of stuff that we want to do, it's now, let's instead of looking backwards, look forwards. So I think this is a really neat. I think this is a really very good, very proactive, and very solid way to approach this. So, Josh, Ken, thank you very much for, keeping this thing alive.
Yeah, I also think one of the great things about having this working group is this can continue to keep the other boards and commissions informed, and they can look at this stuff. And if it happens to meet with or line up with one of their priorities, they can come back through the working group, through me, through staff, whatever, and say, oh, this is a priority. Here's this thing that we've had waiting for however long. This lines up perfectly. This is the language we wanted to use, or something. You could imagine there's something the commissioner board has wanted to do, and they find out that the town wants to do it, and
Right. It raises to the top of their priority then.
exactly.
Yeah.
It puts public participation in the front instead of at the end, which is really, we've been talking about this for what, a couple of years now, Josh, or whatever. However, in
Around ETC, when we came
Yeah.
up with that, we wanted to try something like this for the town plan.
so this is I think this is a really very positive outcome so far, and it's worth going. Ken, did you want to jump in? You can stop raising your hand. Just jump in.
I should mention, I'm also on the Act 171, is that right? Catherine, Act 171?
Yes. Yep.
Yes, so, trouble with working in silos, I would have either them together, I would have said as part of the effort we already did, we should talk about Act 171 requirements, but, hey, life goes on separately, and we are going to do a different kind of outreach for Act 171, which will be an additional input for the town, and we're gonna have to wait for that.
And we'll still be looking for input from energy and from conservation, direct input,
Oh, yeah.
as we go through. But I think this is a shift in reaching out to the public first. Instead of putting a plan in front of people, we're actually asking people to help create the plan.
Right. And
Go ahead.
the wonderful thing about, again, members of those committees already being involved is, as you said, it's not going to be this 150-page document from on high, from the planning commission, lands on commission, on trails and conservation, and they're like, okay, seems fine to me. Like, they'll already know where things are going. If they're meeting up until the point when this is finalized, they'll have a reason to discuss it and sort of a stake in it. And it'll be their document too, which again is what we've been trying to do.
So I will note too that should have introduced Kat Mon, who is our UVM intern this semester. She's working with us on the town plan, and I've already tasked her to reaching out to department heads and the boards and committees just to say, here are the relevant sections within the town plan. The last town plan, we want you to take a look at that. We wanted to make you aware of here's what we think we've already accomplished as far as action steps go, and get any new actions from them, and saying, but there's more coming as we're refining the vision. So we'll feed you that information. But so she's being very specific for trails. This is your section you should be looking at. Public works, this is your section. So I really appreciate her help in that.
Good. Thank you. Ahead. We'll say thank you at the end. But excellent. Josh or Ken, anything else that you'd like to add to this tonight? I mean, it feels like the next step is socialization through town meeting.
Yeah. I did want to do just a quick little share of sort of what I'm seeing as a tentative schedule, and
Okay.
it might morph. I think it probably will, sort of as different things become available, or different information becomes available.
Before you go to that too
Yeah.
much, does anyone online or the gentleman here in the audience with us have any questions at this stage or anything that's up?
I've got a question.
Go ahead, Tom.
First, thank you guys for doing this. On the climate page, there was design standards and regulations, and I'm assuming there's a lot of overlap between those two.
Right, as I said, there's a lot of things that naturally overlap, but when we sort of made the categories for the clouds and categorized them, it was important, but to us, to me anyway, when someone said a different word, or phrase it a different way, we did want to preserve that. But you're right, there's a great deal of overlap between things like design standards and regulations and say green incentives. But the particular differences would be, if you could imagine design standards being somewhat different from, like it'd be more about building, whereas regulations, maybe someone meant something more about like setbacks and how much impermeable surface. And so you did want to like keep that nuance in there, but yeah, there's absolutely a lot of overlap.
I'm just thinking in the context of climate, they almost start the same. For me. So, you know, it might be a good idea to merge them if you guys feel the same. The other thing I'll mention is that in terms of just the design of it, it'd be good to have different, not have yellow and orange text next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because it didn't, on my screen, it didn't show up that different.
Yeah, it sounds like from what Ken said, there's the ability to change up colors and fonts, and so we'll make sure that it's more clear. Yep. So I just pulled up this spreadsheet that, so on the right side, we see the word summary, and then the left side has topic, and it's within the different category area. And so there's and if we go to even another spreadsheet where we have all the comments, there's a lot more nuance to some of these comments than what is showing in a one word. So we want to make sure we preserve that and make that a part of our discussion when we're working on that vision. So we don't want to just say, oh, it's education is important, but we want to say, well, we want to involve schools and have weather alerts. I'm not saying we'll do that necessarily, but as an example. So it's just something to keep in mind. The word cloud is helpful, but it doesn't get to all the nuances that we saw. Like,
Ken?
Yeah, my recommendation was to write a short paragraph, one or two or maybe 3 sentences on each of the top 3 items on each of word clouds.
yeah, I think we were all on board with that.
Commissioners, any additional? John, Josh? No, you're Josh. You already talked too much. Mr. Mangan.
That's taken that. Catherine, you were going to bring
The timeline, though, right? I think you
Yes.
brought that up for just a second and then went to something else.
Yeah.
I interrupted her.
Typical.
Okay. Sorry, this is weird on my screen. Okay, so just, sort of generally, I threw this together looking at really our end date of, I guess I should have put that on, but it's town meeting in March of 2024. And so in order to meet that date, at the end of our process here, we need to have a warning for that town meeting. We need to have public hearings with the select board, and then before that from the planning commission. And typically we've done 2 public hearings each. And so working backwards, I think our end dates are a little bit flexible. I think the select board doesn't necessarily need to warn on January 16th, but I do believe it's like at the end of January. So that could be pushed back a little bit, but it fits in with the second public hearing being on that date. And in the meantime, they are also working on budget and also town meeting agenda items. So, this is subject to change a bit, but it is in line of what it has looked like in the past for other town plan updates.
Question.
Yes.
Given that we've already, every portion of what we're doing is public aspect. We've got time to think this through, but I'd maybe like to introduce the idea of doing the public hearings, like the last 2 work sessions and so forth, as not just a work session, but also make them public hearings as well.
So have more than 2 public hearings?
No, not have the, I mean, I'm looking at, we've got October, on this schedule, October 19th and November 9th. You know, I would be looking to actually move them up and have them be public hearing. I'm just, the toying with the idea of having the public hearing with a work session conjoined, so that it's, you know, we're hearing from the public, but we're also making changes on the fly, so that when we get to, say, November, it's a done document that goes to the select board that's had public hearings, all the public meetings, the work sessions, and so forth. So I'd like to float the idea of doing the public meetings in August and September, or September, October, instead of October, November, and have them be conjoined with a work session. So public input, adjustments on the fly, public, you know, and so forth. It's just an idea
Sure.
to think about.
Sure. I think the more opportunity that we're working with the public along the way, the better. And in a public hearing setting, I think that's kind of a fun idea, actually, to think of that more as a working session, even though it's a public hearing.
And my thinking on that is to potentially be able to deliver this to the select board prior to
A little earlier.
the deep dive they've got to start focusing on their budget and so forth. So, and it would also, as we've done with this, I think there should be messaging, or they should understand, hopefully, that the amount of public input to get to that point has been more than has been in the past. So maybe the workload they have is less for review and so forth. So toy with that idea, see how it fits scheduling wise, and what the working group feels, or actually that it'll be in the PC's hand by that point. But let's maybe toy with the idea of having the public meeting be a work session as well, for at least one of those.
Yep.
Can I jump in for a second?
Who's that?
This is
Sharon? Yeah, go ahead.
Sharon Kelly, for the record. I like that idea a lot. I do caution a little bit that maybe that happens for only one public hearing, because I think once you finalize your second public hearing, it should be the final document that you're going to send up to the select board, and everybody would have, you know, seen it and have their comments, and they will still have an opportunity, if those comments didn't get in there, to bring them up at the select board table. Otherwise, are we going for a third public hearing so that there's no input and this is what we've got? I don't know, at some point you have to cut off that.
Right, and my thought was not that public input would happen and then changes would go away. My thought was that in these sessions we might be able to enter the public input and make the changes at that point. We've got a lot of work sessions, you know, scheduled through, and the idea would be that if the first, anyways, the details could be worked out. If this is something that sounds like it might be doable, then we can work on the fine tuning of it and how to do it. I wouldn't anticipate a third public hearing. I'm actually trying to reduce the number of sessions so that we could accelerate the delivery to the select board. So something to think about.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So also, you know, somewhere in here, I think it's the first weekend in October, is going to be the next Explore Essex Festival. And we're planning on doing some sort of big community event on, I think it's Saturday, the 7th of October, where that would be another spot to have this before people. I think we'll have hopefully a big turnout there. So, a lot, you know, families and, you know, everyone through all age ranges. And so, you know, that, you know, we, at that point, we'll be pretty close, or maybe we already would have had a first public hearing with your suggested schedule, but I think it still works as another opportunity to get some input.
If we're doing that with looking for solicitation input, we just have to have, I think to Sharon's point, our final plan, we either have to make changes that night during the meeting,
Right.
or we have to have some, if we make changes, it has to be, you know, warned again, sort of thing. But anyways, that's all detail. I think that if you feel as you're going through the scheduling and workflow that this looks like it could work, let's see what we can do to push it up so that it's not, it doesn't land on the select board when they're looking at
In
their
their
budget
crunch
session.
time. Yep.
I'd rather have them be in a good mood when they look at this than in a gnarly mood. And I know we got a couple select board members sitting on the meeting tonight, so. Do you need anything from the PC at this point? The PC is a body to support this, or is this simply a report out? Josh, Catherine, do you want us to say, please keep going? Is this?
I mean, I think the sense is pretty clear that you want us to keep going. I don't think we need anything official. I haven't heard any strong objections to either the timeline or the manner in which we're doing this. I don't feel like we need an official anything. An official anything would be great if we want to vote to say yay, but I think the sense is pretty clear and we know what we're going to be doing.
So if we're gonna, and here's another thought process. Since you and Ken are both on the line, for the town plan or the town meeting, if we're going to do any sort of a presentation, I'd really like representation from the working group to make that presentation. So whether it's Josh or whether it's Josh and Ken or whomever, I think it's worth recognizing that the public has been getting us to this point. This isn't the PC delivering stuff; it's members of the public. So it's another thought process. Anything else on this subject that we want to bring up? Okay, let's move on. The next item on our agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from February 9th.
I did make a change, Dustin. I neglected to add John Mangan, and I added Tom Ferlin twice, so I have fixed that behind the scenes.
Well, Tom had a lot of input.
He did do quite some motions there, so I agree.
Okay,
So the speaking of small changes, the copy that I'm looking at has me as virtual, and I was here
Thank
or
you.
there.
okay. So let's
Physically present for that.
let's offer a motion to put the minutes on the table, and we can just make the notes of those things officially. So I take a motion for the minutes of February 9th, 2023.
I move we approve the minutes, February
Thanks.
9th, 2023.
Moved by John, okay. Second by Tom. Moved by Mr. Mangan, seconded by Mr. Ferlin. Corrections to the attendance as noted. As noted by Sharon and by Josh. Are there any other adjustments that folks want to bring to the table? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor of the minutes as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes carry 5-0. 5-0. 5. Okay, we're moving along, screaming on here.
So we have no David and no Shoe, is that correct?
Nope,
No, sure, share.
shoes on,
here.
shoes here.
No, David.
Oh, right, sorry, one vacancy. Sorry, my bad.
Right. There's only 6 of us now.
So we have another business, we have a DRB update and an ArcGIS urban grant update. Is that how you pronounce it?
It is. Yeah, we usually call it something different than that, so that's why it probably looks odd.
Okay.
So there's not really much on the way of the DRB update. I kind of forget where we left it, but you probably all know that as part of the town charter update, there is a change in there saying that the current model of PC ZBA will change to PC DRB, and there's a date certain for that. So it needs to be approved by voters, and then it goes to the legislature for approval. And once it gets through all that approval, then it will be the whole charter's approved. And then, so if that's the case, then the switch will be January 1st, 2025 to the DRB. So just to give you that heads up that we'll be in the future discussing that more, some at the planning commission level, some at staff level. We want to make sure the zoning board is involved in those discussions as well, and the select board too. So
we have theoretically less than 2 years to manage a transition and manage the town plan update and so forth. So that's another factor in getting the town plan update to the select board ahead of that January 1st.
give us
date.
more time on.
Well, I think if we don't, then it's dead in the water, because which board is, which it's going to be lost in the transition.
Well, it's 2025.
Right.
Right,
and
the
we're-
charter,
So
does the charter
2020.
update get voted on in,
It would be
March
the
of
end of this
24?
legislative session.
Yeah.
So this year,
Okay.
Anyways,
2023.
another just more impetus to move that along.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other business we need?
So the ArcGIS, Arc Urban grant is, it's our bylaw modernization grant. That's how we've been
Okay.
referring to it.
Yep.
And so they are using ArcGIS Urban, which is a ArcGIS mode where they're envisioning density in different parts of town and was outside of the ETC next area within the sewer core. It's been kind of slow, so there's actually really not much to update since we last presented this back in, when was that? Like maybe November, December. So just wanted you to know it's still in progress. It's just a sort of a little slow right now.
Okay. Commissioners, anything? Okay, then with that, we're at the point where we can conclude the meeting, and I would welcome a motion from the commission.
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Moved and seconded moved by Shu, seconded by John. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned at 18:47. Sharon, did you get that?
I did get that, another vote in the mix.
Yeah, so that was the move to adjourn. That was a 5.5, or is that 5.25? Nope,